Hello, 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 hello. Greetings, 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 greetings. What's going on? Peace and power. Peace and power. Hello. Greetings. Peace and power and elevation be to all of you out there. This your girl Tiffany. I'm here live in effect. And today's topic, I want to talk about the drinking gourd. All right, so some of you may be familiar with the concept about the drinking gourd, and some of you may not be familiar with it. Okay, peace, brother Ron. How you doing? All right, so the concept about the drinking gourd. What is the drinking gourd? So the drinking gourd is a folklore music, right? But it tells a story about the enslaved Africans and how they used the star constellation, which the stars look like an actual gourd, like a Big Dipper. So they use those star constellation as a way to guide them to freedom, or to give them direction to get to where they need to go to get off the plantation. All right. So the reason why I know about this because in elementary school, I was probably in the 5th grade when I first heard about the drinking gourd, and we had to do a little play. We had to do a little play on here. And guess who was the lead singer? Guess who was leading the song? Myself. I was the one that was leading. So I had to be the lead singer. And it was pretty embarrassing because I got laughed at by all the other kids singing that song. But hey, it's okay. Yeah, they looked at me and they started laughing, like they literally bust out laughing at me. Because I'm singing a song about slavery and about people following the star constellation or whatnot. At that time, I didn't really understand that much. I mean, it was just, I just started singing, and from there, it was a funny thing. It was really funny, but it really told a story about, the enslaved Africans and how they followed the star constellation. And this goes back into the subject about cultural and not cultural anthropology, cultural astronomy. What's up, Sean? How you doing? What's up, brother Sean? What's up, brother Ron? Thank y'all for coming through. So this goes back to the concept about cultural astronomy in a sense. Okay, so it goes back to how our ancestors understood how they use stars and how they interpreted stars. You know what I'm saying? And this is one of their form of interpretation. Just by looking at the star constellation, they follow whatever the stars went to get them to the freedom they need to go. Now, some may argue that, well, it's not necessarily true, it's just a song or whatever, and some argue that it is true. Okay, but that's what I wanted to talk about today. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Thank y'all for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe and hit the channel and hit the notification bell, and also make sure y'all share this channel. Make sure you let people know what's going on. Subscribe and all that great stuff. Okay. So I'm also sharing the video on here. So just give me a second real quick. Okay, so I tried to gather as much information as I possibly could on the story about the drinking gourd. Let me see if I can find something else that will follow the suit. Okay. Okay, so I found some information. I found some more stuff. All right, now I'm ready. Okay, sorry about that. Now let's go ahead and let's go into the Wikipedia article about what is following the drinking gourd, what the whole concept is about. Okay, then I want to take you to the sources. Okay, so as you got, I hope you guys can see this. Cool. So following the Drinking Gourd. Following the Drinking Gourd is an African American folk song published in 1928, right? It was published in 1928. The Drinking Gourd is another name for the Big Dipper asterism. Folklore has its that enslaved people in the United States used it as a point of reference so they would not get lost. According to legend, the song was used by a conductor of the Underground Railroad called Pig Leg Joe to guide some fugitive slaves. While the song may possibly refer to some lost fragment of history, the origin and context remain a mystery. A more recent source challenging the authenticity of the claim that the song was used to help slaves escape to the north and to freedom. So here's the history. It says Texas Folklore Society and H.B. Parks. So following the Drinking Gourd was collected by H.B. Parks and etymologists and amateur folklorists in the 1910s. Park reported that Peg-Leg Joe, an operative of the Underground Railroad, had passed as a laborer and spread the song to different plantations, giving direction for slaves to escape. The song was published by the Texas Folklore Society in 1928. The cover spelled the title, Follow the Drinking Gourd. That's how they said, Follow the Drinking Gourd. Anyways, so Lee Hayes in 1947 of the Automatic Singer and the Weavers rearranged following the Drinking Gourd and published it in the People's Song Bulletin. Familiar with African American music and culture, Hayes stated that he himself had heard parts of the song from an elderly Black woman named Auntie Laura. Hayes described the melody as coming from Auntie Laura, and while the lyrics came from anthologies, probably the Parks version. And it says Randy Sparks / John Woodham. In 1955, singer Randy Sparks heard the song from an elderly street singer named John Woodham. These lyrics diverged greatly from the Parks and Hayes version and included no geographical information. Sparks later founded the New Christy Minstrels, with whom he recorded a version of the song based on Woodham's lyrics. All right. Let's see, what else can we find down here? It says the meaning. Two of the stars in the Big Dipper line up very closely with and point to Polaris. Polaris is a circumpolar star, and so it always seemed pretty close to the direction of true north. Hence, according to a popular myth, all slaves had to do was look for the Drinking Gourd and follow it to the North Star, north to freedom. James Kelly has argued against the historicity of this interpretation in the Journal of Popular Culture. All right, so again, as I mentioned, there's been arguments that it was not really based on the underground and people following the star constellation, and then there was those that made the argument that it was based on that. Okay, so actually, I do believe that it was based on it, because otherwise, I don't think that many people would be able to find freedom to get to the north and get to where they need to go. So I think this concept that really actually helped the slaves to be able to maneuver around, because they had ways of doing things. They were very knowledgeable people. And as I mentioned before, they always was able to synchronize the African culture within the American culture. Okay, they blended in so well that today we don't even know that we're practicing the African customs of our ancestors, or we're taking on their African tradition, while we discrediting and we're trying to talk down and try to throw them on the bus. Right, at the same time, we're taking on their culture, we're taking on the customs. You know what I'm saying? Because that's how clever and that's how smart our ancestors were. They had to be able to learn how to blend in with the American society, or within this foreign culture they was in. So they had to take they took what they practiced in the past, right? They took their custom and they just blended in. You know what I'm saying? So, and this is one of the things they had to do. They had to use the star constellation to get them where they needed to go. Yes, exactly, Sean. Syncretism, absolutely. They had to use a star constellation. They used the star constellation. It just, You know what I'm saying? I mean, you can't say they never knew about stars, they never paid attention to the sky or anything like that, because they did. This is where cultural astronomy take place. This is where cultural astronomy comes into play. Okay, it comes into play because they had to use this as a point of reference. You know what I'm saying? So, but anyways, that's that information from Wikipedia. Peace United, what's it? Peace US Atlantic Creole Nation. Shout out to you, peace, brother or sister. Thank you for coming through. Thank you. All right. Now here's a book that you guys, it's a children book, but it kind of gives like a story about the Underground Railroad and whatnot. This book right here is called Follow the Drinking Gourd, Come Along the Underground Railroad, written by Wim Coleman and Pat Perrin, illustrated by Courtney A. Martin. Okay. So that's the name of this book. It's basically got like different characters in the book, and then it's got the song in here as well. All right. So as you can see, so here's the introduction. It says a slave is a person who is legal property of another person. Slavery in the United States became illegal in the 1860s. Before that, some free people who opposed to slavery helped slaves escape. This play is about a brother and sister who escaped slavery. The play begins in 1880 with Old Illy and Old Sam. They are the narrators who tell how they escaped years before. Old Illy and Young Illy and Young Sam are the escaping slaves. Their story takes place in 1855 and 1856. Many slaves found their way north by following Polaris, the North Star. They looked for the Big Dipper, which they call the Drinking Gourd. The two front stars of the Big Dipper point towards Polaris and towards freedom. The path they follow and the people who helped were called the Underground Railroad. Now, let's talk a little bit about the Underground Railroad, okay? The Underground Railroad was not an actual Underground Railroad. For those of you who think or believe that it was not, okay? It was just basically a pathway, okay? It was a pathway to get to wherever you need to go. So they call it the Underground because it was a secret location. It was a secret pathway. That's all it was, okay? It was like a belt line. That's it. You know, it wasn't an actual Underground Railroad there per se, but that's the term that was used. Okay. Let's see. So all right, so here's the website is followthedrinkinggourd.org. All right, so right here it says under cultural history. Okay, so introduction. Follow the Drinking Gourd, a cultural history, right? It says again, it was an American folk song. Right, it was first published in 1928. Okay, and the song was supposedly used by Underground Railroad operator to encode escape instruction in a map. The direction then enabled fleeing slaves to make their way north from Mobile, Alabama to Ohio River and freedom. Taken at face value, the Drinking Gourd refers to the hollow out gourd used by slave and other rural American as a water dipper, but here it is used as a code name for the Big Dipper star formation, which points to Polaris, the pole star in north, right? And it says, in the ensuing 80 years, the Drinking Gourd played an important role in the civil rights and folk revival movements of the 1950s and 1960s in contemporary elementary school education. Much of the Drinking Gourd's enduring appeal derives from its perceived status as a unique historical remnant harkening back to the pre-Civil War South. No other such map song survived, but re-examine the Drinking Gourd song as history rather than folklore raises many questions, and the Drinking Gourd, as it appears in roughly 200 recordings, dozens of song books, several award-winning children books, and many other places, is surely not traditional. The signature line in the chorus for the old man is a way for it to carry you to freedom could not possibly have been sung by escaping slave because it was written by Lee Hayes 80 years after the end of Civil War. All right, so the lyrics done changed over time. Okay. So let's see. So you got the content, the table of contents down here. You got the collection story, what the lyrics mean, cultural histories, the song as history, interpretation over the last 20 years. How do we know what we know? Afterwards, is this song authentic? Let's see. Let's go down here where it says afterward, or is this song authentic? Okay, so let's see what it says over here. It says, was Peg-Leg Joe an actual person? Perhaps, but even if there was a Drinking Gourd song in the field, that doesn't prove that there really was a Peg-Leg Joe. There are many songs based on real people. There are many songs based on composite character, and there are many songs based on fictional character. For record, I reviewed 2 decades worth of minutes from the New England Anti-Slavery Society, along with various society ledger books. I found H.B. Park's great uncle, Dr. Harry Cowdery, who served as vice president from 1840 to 1848, but sadly, there's no trace of a peg-leg settler. Nothing would delight me more than to find the old salt lurking in a slave narrative or other primary source document. Please send any peg-leg Joe sighting my way. They would be very welcome indeed. All right, so it says, towards a new theory, it says previous explanation of the Drinking Gourd song, whatever their accuracy, at least had the virtue of being internally consistent and neatly compelling. According to the received wisdom, following the Drinking Gourd was taught to slaves in the Mobile, Alabama region by a real person and itinerant abolitionists who also marked the encoded route given in the song. This route was then used by slaves to escape northward to freedom, crossing the Ohio River at Paducah, Kentucky. This version hinged on H.B. Park's assertion that a great uncle who had been active in the Underground Railroad confirmed the particulars based on primary records. All right. As we have seen, there are serious questions on many of these points. If we believe Drinking Gourd was an actual folk song, but discount some or all of this explanation, we are then left with the most critical question of all, how to explain it. All right. So it says, here is a preliminary new theory about the song and how it evolved. If the song predated the Civil War, it served principally as an inspiration to escaping slaves. Like the wooden version, the song would have contained limit or no map information. The geographic verses were added after the war, either by creating new verses or by combining the Drinking Gourd verses with those from another song. Traditional songs are so often combined in the field that ethnomusiologists have several terms of art for it, including amalgamation and the unfortunate sounding contamination. It also possible the song as we know it from the Parks account emerged in entirely after the Civil War, whether it arose before or after the war. We didn't argue about the historical authenticity of the song, including the entire route or the route ending in southern Illinois or many other historical points, because we can now evaluate the song as folklore, not as history. Okay. All right. So as you can see, that's one account. This comes from the website in itself. Okay. Yeah, that comes from the website. So again, as you can see, it's some type of debate behind the song and its authenticity, its origin or whatnot. But this is the website if you guys want to look more into it. It's called followingthedrinkinggourd.org. Okay. So you guys can check that out. Let's see. So here's another one. It's called currentsky.com. So let's look at currentsky.com. John Henry puts much of the history itself was written as folklore. Yes, okay, and let's talk about that for a moment. So a lot of times history can be told in folklore, okay? It can be told in musical sense. That doesn't not necessarily mean that the story, the history did never happen or it never occurred. It's just the way the setting and how it's formatted is told in a fictional manner or told in a folklore manner. You know what I'm saying? To be able to tell a story to bring some type of entertainment or amusement to the historical situation or the historical event that took place. So again, with the following the Drinking Gourd, I mean, yes, there's question about its authenticity, etc., etc. But if we listen to the song, we know the story. It goes back to the story about enslaved Africans finding their freedom, and they followed the North Star, and they was trying to get away from the plantation. They was heading north. So we know that for a fact. Okay. So yes, brother John Henry, I agree with you. Shout out to CK the Poet. Thank you for coming through, CK. Thank you for coming through. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. All right. Shout out to you, CK. Thank you for coming through. Let's see. There's more information over here. So again, I'm on currentsky.com. All right. Now let's see what they talk about. It says following the Drinking Gourd. So February is the month we traditionally acknowledge American of African origin and the plight of their ancestors held as slaves during the early years of our country. Now, during the years leading up to and around the American Civil War, slaves very often made their way north to freedom by taking advantage of the Underground Railroad, a system of people and locations that were safe havens or safe routes for escaping slaves to follow. All right. Much of the travel was done at night, and as was common in those days, people used their knowledge of the stars to help determine compass direction. Primary use were the stars of two dipper-shaped patterns known as the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper, right? These easily recognizable star patterns or asterism are part of the constellation Ursula Major, the Great Bear, and Ursa Minor, the Little Bear. The Big Dipper astrium was also known to many as the Drinking Gourd due to its resemblance to a common gourd that, when dried out, was used as a drinking vessel. Okay. As you can see, that's the star constellation. All right. So that's the Big Dipper and that's Little Dipper right there. Anyways, it says using a readily available rotating planisphere or the Big Dipper star Clark pattern, students can explore the changing position of these stars due to rotation and revolution of the Earth. Additionally, students can see how the circumpolar stars can also be used as a sky clock for approximating the local time due to the regular rate that the Earth rotates. All right. It says stars that we see at night may be classified into two groups based on their visibility. Stars that rise in the east and set in the west are highest over the southern horizon for northern hemisphere may be referred to as seasonal stars. As the Earth revolves around the sun, these stars and their associated constellation patterns rise earlier each night by approximately 4 minutes and by about 2 hours each month. What we will see as a winter star in the evening this month, for example, we will be seeing further towards the west at the same time next month, and so on. See these changes, have students go outside around 7:30 p.m. mid-month, which is February, and observe where the stars of Orion are located. Okay. Have students repeat this observation next month at the same time. They will see that Orion is further west, and as they think about the seasonal changes, students will realize that Orion was the second place it was during February, but 1 to 2 hours earlier than during March. This can also be modeled using the planisphere. Okay, so this came out in February of 2006, February 15 of 2006. It says the other group of stars classified by the visibility is referred to as a circumpolar stars. These stars, as their associate constellation pattern, never rise and set relative to the horizon, but are visible all night long. They follow a circular pattern around a point in the sky known as the celestial pole. In the northern hemisphere, the north celestial pole is marked by the star we call the North Star, or Polaris. It is the end star in the handle of the Little Dipper and is very close to being directly over the Earth's North Pole. As the Earth rotates about its axis of rotation, the circumpolar stars appear to follow a circular motion around Polaris, neither rising nor setting. Okay. Circumpolar stars may also be thought of as a seasonal stars in that they will have a certain position over the northern hemisphere each season. However, since their apparent motion carries them around the pole star throughout the night, it is more practical to consider these changes seasonal position by using a particular time as a reference. With that in mind, during the evening hours after sunset, for example, the seasonal position of the stars making up the Big Dipper pattern may be described with reference to hours on the clock. So during the winter months, the Big Dipper is located at about the 3 o'clock position. During spring, it is high overhead near the 12 o'clock position. During the summer months, the Big Dipper is near the 9 o'clock position, and during the autumn, which is fall, the Big Dipper is low over the horizon near the 6 o'clock position. All right, so as you can see, they talk about the moon phases, right? So you got the first quarter moon on February the 5th, the full moon February the 12th, last quarter moon the 21st, and new moon on the 27th, right? So again, this was back in 2006. Okay, so they talk about the visible planets. Mercury would be at its best evening apparition for the year, visible over the western horizon at sunset. Venus will rise about 2 to 3 hours before the sun and will be visible over the southeastern horizon, and Mars will be visible over the southwestern horizon at the sunset. So Jupiter will rise around midnight and will be visible over the southern eastern horizon at sunrise, and Saturn will rise before sunset and will be visible over the southeastern horizon at the sunset. Okay. All right, so as you can see, they got the sources at the bottom. All right. Let me try to zoom this up a little bit. Okay. So here's are the sources at the very bottom. Okay. And so you can see where it says tracking the planets. As you can see, it says Mercury, right ascension, declination distance. Venus, right ascension, declination distance, right? Right ascension, Jupiter, right ascension, Saturn, right ascension, etc. So it talks about the calculation on the 5th, the 19th, and the 26th of February of 2006 during that time period. Okay, so it's very interesting. It's very mathematical, astronomical, as you can see. It's very astronomical, but that's the best way to explain it. Like, this is a good article here, and how they broke it down, how they actually explained the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. All right. All right, so yeah, that's that information. Yeah. So again, getting back to the point, our ancestors always synchronize their culture or their custom into this culture. All right. And so the question becomes, what is the Black culture? And what would the Black culture be without African customs? What would the Black culture be without African custom, without African practices? If you would take away the African practices, right? For those of you who say that, we Black American and, we have a Black culture. Okay, take away the African culture. What do you have? What principle do you stand upon? How do you stand on that foundation? You wouldn't have a foundation to stand on because you done took away the African custom. So there will be no Black culture without African practices, without African synchronism. There will be no Black culture. So again, because your African ancestor was the first people that was considered to be Black, right? Your ancestors took what they knew and they brought it here, right? So again, you're taking on a lot of the practices, you're taking on a lot of the customs, especially if you're from the South. If you grew up in the South and you was raised in the South, you're taking on a lot of African customs. That's just all to it. So anybody that tells you that, oh, your ancestors didn't know anything about science, or your ancestors wasn't very scientifically knowledgeable, no, they wasn't scientifically knowledgeable in the sense of the Western culture or how the Western people identify it or how they interpret things. No, they weren't on that level, but they had some form of scientific knowledge, but they had their own cultural interpretation of the scientific knowledge. Okay, they dealt with what is called the traditional knowledge or indigenous knowledge. That's what they dealt with. Okay, they took on that. They took on that. That's how they was able to connect with nature and be able to have a understanding about the natural phenomenon. All right, that's why when you see people practicing the African traditional spiritual system, right, or African traditional religion, is their way of being able to connect with the natural force. That's all it is. It is a spiritual way to connect with the natural force. And that's how they did it. So our ancestors, they were very spiritual people. They were always spiritually inclined. Okay. And one of the ways they stayed spiritually inclined was dealing with the astronomy, the cultural astronomy, being able to look at the stars, look at the moon, look at the sun and stuff like that, and being able to use that as a guiding tool, as a reference. Okay. But like I said, as I mentioned yesterday, cultural astronomy is underrepresented because you don't have as many minorities in the STEM field. So when you don't have enough minorities, quote unquote, in the STEM field, right? Then subjects like cultural anthropology and cultural astronomy will be underrepresented at all time and will be overlooked at. All right. But anyways, this your girl Tiffany, and this is all that I have to say for today. Thank you guys for coming through. Thank you guys for checking out the channel. I try to give as much information as I possibly could about the Drinking Gourd. So I hope you guys appreciate the video. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. Make sure you share the video. Make sure you check out my other videos on here. Check out all the other contents I have on here. And I'll reconnect with you all later. So until then, y'all take it easy on yourself. Y'all be safe out here in these streets. And I will come back later on and come up with some more subjects. So tune in. All right. This your girl Tip. Peace. Thank you. All right then. Be safe.